Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, October 27th, 2022. And our top story today, U.S. holiday travel may be more turbulent than we saw this summer. And joining us now to discuss this and a lot more, Diana Heckler is the president of D-Tours Travel. Diana, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here. I hope I can be helpful.
Absolutely. I know you're going to be helpful. You know, a lot of Americans are going to head out this holiday season going over the river, through the woods, maybe to grandmother's house, maybe not, for Thanksgiving and the holidays. What's your sense for holiday travel? I would think based on the summer experience, people are going to have to plan sooner rather than later.
That's definitely true. And frankly, if you don't already have your plans by now for this Christmas, you're really going to have to struggle. I've had people normally who would be booking in May and even this year for May, like you could still get something. But my latest one that came in, I think, was about a month ago to go to New Zealand. And we have really struggled. To get space. And it was like, okay, it's the most expensive room is available. And, you know, you've got to make a prepayment and it's going to be non-refundable. And that's if you can even find space. So it's tough right now for anything that's in a warm climate or anything that's in a popular destination. So, you know, the outgrowth of the pent-up demand that we've all heard a lot about this past year is that a lot of people really thought that maybe this would be the year they'd take a Christmas vacation for the first time or a holiday vacation. And they've probably been pretty surprised by how much hotels cost and how little space is left. So, you know, one of the things that I was really startled by even this summer was how high the prices were for hotel rooms. And that was true whether you were traveling in the United States or Italy or France or any place else. Hotels that normally would have charged $300 a night, we're charging $600 a night. Hotels that were charging, I mean, this is kind of extreme, but a hotel in Positano, Italy, that normally would charge 1,900 euros a night for a sea view room, which is pretty hefty. They were getting 3,000. They were charging 3,000 euros a night, and they were charging it because they could get it. So, I mean, that's an extreme example, and that was summer travel, and people don't generally go to Positano in the winter. But even for, again, going to the Caribbean, Hawaii, places that people tend to think of as great Christmas or Thanksgiving destinations, you really should have already had your plans in place by several months at this point.
So when you look at this pent-up demand, are the higher prices just due to gasoline costs or fuel costs, I guess, in the case of planes, trains, and automobiles? Or is it just the organizations just trying to make up what they may have lost during the pandemic? Because let's face it, travel, hotel, car rental, all faced a lot of economic challenges in the last 3 years. So it would make sense to me that maybe rates are going up simply because of the losses that they took.
I think you've touched on a lot of different elements that are all feeding into this one big pot. So yes, I think you're correct that fuel prices are definitely up, and that's something that, you know, our friends in Saudi Arabia and Russia are very happy about and worked hard to injure the United States for, which was not great or not nice. So there's that factor. And then, yes, there's hotels and hotels have, I think, again, tried to charge whatever the market would bear because let's face it, they were shut down for 2 years. You know, I just got back from a conference in Miami on Sunday. And it was people who are both travel advisors like myself, people who run cruise lines, people who run hotels, and everybody is coming off of this basically trauma of 2 years where, you know, ships couldn't sail. Hotels, you know, had a few clients, but some of them were shuttered because there were not enough people. Now you've got additional strains on the whole system, which is that there are people who are not in the positions they once were. They were let go. So maybe the hotels are even operating fewer or using fewer rooms because they don't have enough cleaning people. They don't have enough people to run the restaurant. So all of these things create a scarcity. And scarcity, of course, is, you know, one of the basic laws of economics, supply and demand. So again, when you talk about, what are all the factors driving it, there are a whole lot of them, and they're all combining, and it makes it difficult for a consumer to really know where you're going to find the best deal. I will say that one of the ways to get around the high price of hotel rooms these days, and even transportation, is, cruises are pretty good value because you are not paying the hotel rooms. They don't seem to have really jacked up their prices in the way that a lot of the hotels did, even though they too were just as affected with 2 years of basically not being able to sell.
I have one more question before you go to a commercial break, because I want to pick up on the cruise lines in the second segment. But let me ask you about, in the past, before the pandemic, a lot of people went to these travel sites, the Travelocities. I mean, you've seen the commercials, right? And maybe it was a lot easier back then because it was more commoditized and people could just, the experience was the experience. But has this pandemic shift, this pandemic and the scarcity that we're talking about, has this really put the focus back onto the travel advisor? And do the travel advisors have an important role to play, because people like yourself can find the quote unquote deals or know what's hot and maybe what's not?
What a great question. What a great question. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. One of the things that I took a lot of pride in during when the pandemic first hit was that I had many clients whose trips were canceled. And in almost every single case, I was able to get them a refund of their prepaid non-refundable rates. And that was because I could write to the hotel directly, and I don't represent just a one-off, and I'm not Expedia. That hotel wants to work with me in the future. They wanted to make sure that they could take care of my clients. So I felt that was a real difference in terms of somebody who had booked through Booking.com or Expedia or Google. But one of the interesting things that I heard at this conference this week, and I thought it was such a great comment, was someone was talking about how when people are going to invest in their hard-earned savings in the stock market, very rarely do they do this on their own. They almost always hire a financial advisor. And why wouldn't you want a professional to help you minimize your risk, maximize your profit, help you from making mistakes that you might not be aware of, et cetera, et cetera. So in the same case, when you're going to spend some money, and most of the time you're spending thousands of dollars on a vacation, why would you not go to a professional who has the resources that can look at all the different segments of the vacation world and help you figure out what is the right one for you? There are a lot of mistakes that people can make. One of the things I always talk about, and again, we'll talk about cruises later, is that if you've never done a cruise before and you think that all cruises are the same, and you book one, let's say, based on the lowest price, and you say, I want to go to the Caribbean, this one is less expensive than anything else. Maybe it's a great fit, but the chances are that it probably isn't, because all vacations and cruises in general come in all shapes and sizes. And if you pick the wrong cruise line, because it's not your tribe, it's not your demographic, it's whatever, it doesn't meet the way you like to travel, you will hate it and you'll never do another cruise. Whereas if you go to a travel professional who can say, Carnival is really different than Regent, and Regent is quite different than Silversea, and then there's Holland America and Princess. They are all very different, and they all operate in very different ways, and they attract different crowds of people. This is also true for hotels and resorts in the Caribbean. There are islands that are cheaper. Maybe that's good for you, maybe that's not, but you certainly are risking a lot of your hard-earned funds again if you're going to do this all yourself. So I think that during the pandemic, particularly in those early days when people needed a lot of assistance in getting out of things that they were not going to be able to use, that the travel agent community really showed that they are professional, and they are a big help.
Yeah, I think you make all the points that you make are great. And look, I love being able to call somebody or a group of people to help me out, rather than just a generic 800 line, at which I might get answered in 20, 30 minutes, depending on what's going on. Having that person at the end of the phone to help me. And you make a great point about financial advisors, or even when you go buy clothes. If you're going to buy a suit, you don't just typically buy it without someone tailoring it and saying, that it's a good fit across the chest, it's great around the waist, etc. Dana, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about cruises and how you can optimize your travel experience. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking this morning to Diana Heckler of Detours Travel. Well, Diana, thanks so much for staying with us. Really appreciate you hanging around for segment number 2.
Happy to be here.
Yeah,
Happy
absolutely.
To be here.
And yeah, great. And let's talk about, I want to get into cruises in a second, but I want to ask you about airline travel. And pretty much everywhere you go, if you're going to travel abroad, you're going to need to, getting to cruises in a second, you're going to need to hit the airlines. Are there things and tactics we can use, whether it's going through a travel professional or just on our own, to try to find the best flight expenses, but also best flight flexibility, try to saying that 10 times fast, possible?
Definitely. One of the really great things, there are not many good things that came out of the pandemic, but one good thing was the end of airline change fees for all but the least expensive tickets. So there's something on all these airlines that's called basic economy, and I would always advise people to stay away from that. That's, prepaid, non-refundable. You can't choose your seat in advance, and you may not even be able to bring a bag with you, even in carry-on. So stay away from basic economy. That's number one. Number two is that the U.S. carriers, we're down to really 3 big ones and a couple of smaller ones, really did away with the change fees. And let's say that you've booked a trip to Italy and you get COVID at the last minute, you can't travel. Well, if you're on a U.S. carrier like Delta or American or even JetBlue now, United, without the change fees, it's not like the airlines are going to give you your money back, but they will hold your money in a credit and you can use it for something else. And let's face it, eventually you might go visit your grandkids in Indianapolis or Houston or California, and you will undoubtedly be able to use that ticket on a U.S. carrier. Whereas if you have booked it on, say, a foreign carrier, let's say you're going to Morocco and you're on Royal Air Maroc, or you're on, Lufthansa because you're going to Germany, Those are harder to use. So it's a good idea to book it through a U.S. carrier, even if it's going to fly on a partner airline. If you're using the U.S. carrier as the primary one, you have more resources. The other thing I would mention is that, and this isn't always possible, but if you can take a nonstop flight, you really should, even if it costs you a couple $100s more, because it just minimizes the chance that your bag is going to get lost, that your connecting flight won't make the second leg, et cetera. So spend a little bit more money, do nonstop if you can, and use a U.S. carrier. I think those are some really basic things. They will apply for this Christmas travel, but in general as well.
Really, really good advice. And I can tell you, I hate if I miss a connecting flight. Sometimes it's necessary because there may not be a direct, but most of the time there is a direct flight. All right, let me ask you about cruises. And I have to confess, the only thing I know about cruises are watching The Love Boat as a young child.
It's coming back, They're going to be refilming The Love Boat.
I know, but it's not, I mean, without Vicky and Meryl Stubing and Doc and Gopher and Isaac, it's not going to be the same. It's just not going to be the same. But what do I need to know? Either if I'm taking a cruise for the first time, or I'm thinking of taking my family out this fall or into January, what do I need to know about all these cruise lines? Because to your point in segment one, maybe they're not facing as much demand as before, but they're really good places to relax and recuperate from the work life.
They definitely are. And as I mentioned earlier, they come in all shapes and sizes, and literally sizes. You can have giant boats with the big carriers like Royal Caribbean and Carnival, and they're very family friendly. They've got a lot of stuff on board, and if you've got like a 10-year-old, maybe that's exactly what you want. But if you are not interested in being on a boat with 5,000 people, because what you really want to do is go to ports along the Mediterranean, or you want to go snorkeling along the coast of Central America, or you want to go down all the way on the coast of South America down to Antarctica, those big boats are not going to be where you want to be. So, you can have a boat that's as small as 100 people. You can have sort of the smaller, really upscale lines like Silversea, Seabourn, Regent, and maybe the boat has 400 people to 600. That's a very nice size. You won't have a lot of crowding. You also won't have children's programs. So again, you really need to think about who you are, the way you like to vacation, and there's a cruise line for you. There's one for everyone. That I believe, and I've sailed on an awful lot of them, and I've done them with my own kids. And we did a family-friendly one when the kids were tweens. We did a sort of a more upscale one when they were in high school and didn't need those kinds, but they had a teen program, one of them like that. And then I've done ones that are absolutely not adults only. Like they would have kids on board, but they don't have any special facilities for kids. And so, that's appropriate when you wanted to go places like, I went to the Black Sea, which is unfortunately not a war zone, but that was a very interesting cruise with a lot of very well-traveled people on board, lots of people to connect with and to feel that you were, again, I use the word tribe. You can find your tribe, but this is where a travel advisor really helps you, because if you're a consumer and you've never done this before, it's really hard to figure that out. But that's what we do. That's what we know.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, it appears that cruises go everywhere. Look, when I watched the Love Boat, they always used to go to Puerto Vallarta. That seemed like to be the destination every weekend, no matter who the special guest star was.
Filmed in California, Los Angeles.
Correct. Filmed in California. So It was the Pacific Princess. I wonder if even that is utilized anymore. Maybe it is,
Yeah,
and just for
it
purposes,
is.
austerity purposes. But let me ask you last question here. You book a cruise, in terms of all-inclusive costs. I mean, do you have? And I have no idea, so I'm asking you. Do I have to pay like I would at any resort? I have to pay for my food separately. Do I have to pay for my entertainment separately? Will I be able to go see a show on board? Will I be able to use the pools, the drinks, etc.?
It's sort of like ask me a question about how does insurance work. It all depends. So let's say that you want a family-friendly cruise. Generally, those include your transportation, of course, which is the boat, your room, and food. not necessarily even beverages like soda. You will probably pay extra for that. So, the entry level price on one of these really big ships is pretty low, but you end up, that's what it costs you to get on the ship. What does it cost you to get off the ship? What have you paid for on board? So that's a very good question to understand, is that for a big ship, you will pay a lot of additional things, including a beverage package. And we're not even talking alcohol, as I said, we're talking about sodas, and then add alcohol, wine, and also any of your shore excursions, you will need to pay for those. You can contrast that with the higher end lines, which used to always include food and alcohol, and then they started moving towards including shore excursions as well. So one of my favorite lines is very all-inclusive. I mean, really, if you're in one of their suites, they give you a hotel night the night before, they give you a hotel night the night after, all your food, all your shore excursions. I mean, that you know what you're going to pay before you get on the boat, which is great. And then there are another one or two also at the very top tiers, where they're now emulating that other line and beginning to include a lot of shore excursions, maybe not all of them, and maybe not the first, and we call it a pre and post night. And incidentally, a lot of those cruise lines now will include economy class air. And if you're on a high level cruise, they will have a business class air package as well, which is usually at a very good discount. You need to be in early to do that. So with all things cruise, particularly on the smaller ships, the earlier you can make your plans, the better. But it should be a situation where you pretty much know when you've paid your final deposit what you're going to pay for the whole thing.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a lot of fun, and I know my wife is probably watching, my mom is probably watching, and they're probably like, look, let's take a cruise. And look,
Give
I
me
have
a
to
call.
confess, absolutely, and I have to confess that my wife and I used to watch Below Deck, which is a Bravo series, and by the way, they're not a sponsor of the program. Maybe what's his name, Andy Cohen might want to do that. But anyway, it's a great show, and it looks like a lot of fun, and I don't think on a big cruise ship you have to worry about getting seasick. That's what Dramamine is for. Diane, we're going to leave it there. Great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon. And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? Then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Well, visit our website and, of course, all of our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.